What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Critical Overlord here. We're going to be talking about Scream 8 in this video here today. So a lot of you decided to chime in down below in a post that I made this morning about the unfortunate plot of Shrek 5, asking what does Production Weekly have to say about Scream 8. I guess a lot of people started noticing that Production Weekly had a listing for Scream 8, and I will tell you, if you're someone who does not already know, there is nothing substantial on that Production Weekly listing. I had the information shared with me, and yeah, it's pretty bare bones. All it says is in development. Production Weekly has proven itself to be quite credible and useful in the past when it comes to upcoming films, TV shows, and projects related to Hollywood. Sometimes, of course, things have been wrong, and that's fine. That's the nature of how this goes. But this does bring up the rumor from a while back that suggested the possibility of two Scream movies being shot back to back. That, of course, being Scream 7 and then now Scream 8. The only time frame I can see Scream 8 being shot would be this upcoming summer, which is what I think that rumor was, that they are going to take a break and start shooting Scream 8 in the summer. Now, some people will already be going, oh, well, that means we don't have anything to worry about with Scream 7. We already know the outcome, and we already know who we can expect to live and die, because they're just going to carry those characters over into Scream 8. But I will say this, you should remember and keep this in the back of your mind. It is always a possibility that nobody in Scream 7 returns for Scream 8 outside of Roger Jackson. There's always the possibility that Scream 7 is used as the final chapter in the Sidney Prescott story. She rides off into the sunset as she should and gets that piece that many people believe she is owed, and we just leave her alone. Now, going into Scream 8, I think you set that up by using a Kirby Reed or somebody else that I'm not thinking of. I bring up Kirby, of course, to acknowledge the other rumor that people have been throwing my way, or not rumor, but the actual thing that has happened, which is related to Hayden Panettiere following Kevin Williamson on Instagram, because I guess they weren't following each other before, or she wasn't following him before. I don't really monitor things like that. It was useful at one point when it came to Christopher Landon. Then I got the drop on the fact that he had a meeting to direct the film, and of course that aged very well until he dropped out of the project. But if Kirby Reed is going to be coming back, I would like to think that there is something that will transpire in Scream 7 that, while it wraps up Sidney Prescott's story, maybe there is a Ghostface that, of course, gets away, or it has nothing to do with a Ghostface getting away. It's just that they set up Scream 8 being a Kirby-centric film, or whoever that may be, by using Kirby Reed as the gateway into the narrative of Scream 8. They end the film by showing us Kirby in Atlanta. She's investigating something that is related to Ghostface, and it'll tie in to whoever our new protagonist is, or returning protagonist, because that's always a possibility as well, that they bring someone back to be the protagonist who wasn't a part of Scream 7. Now, in terms of some casting news that came out, the two stars that many people believe are going to be the opening sequence in Scream 7, I will raise this possibility. They could be actual stars for not only 7, but Scream 8. We don't know the ins and outs of how those two will factor into this film. The assumption is that they are going to be the opening, because their casting announcement was very reminiscent of how Tony and Samara got announced when it came to Scream 6, and they were both in the opening. But these two stars that got announced, while we are so certain, well, some of us are so certain that they are going to be the opening sequence of 7, what if they are more than just stars for 7? What if they're also stars for Scream 8? Time will tell. Now, the other thing I wanted to address is Sidney Prescott, before I go into also how this Scream 8 fiasco could go down, if any of this ends up aging well from this Production Weekly listing. There is a motive that I think is deserved of a character like Sidney Prescott if you're going to be doing what many people would argue is a true legacy sequel, with Sidney back at the front, picking up all these years later, following the Laurie Strode formula, what they're doing with Julie James. Well, not Julie James, because she's not carrying this upcoming I Know What You Did Last Summer film, but I will say the Laurie Strode formula. They're giving us a true legacy sequel to Scream in some people's eyes, because you have the OG Final Girl back. And the argument is, well, what is there left for Ghostface to go after her for? What is there left for people to be mad at her about? Why don't we strip away people being mad at her and just focus on a group of deranged individuals or a pair of deranged individuals who idolize a version of Sidney Prescott? There is a specific version of this woman that they idolize. They have a parasocial relationship with her, and that's the motive in Scream 7. Meaning this. These people are obsessed or look up to Sidney Prescott, the victim. Not Sidney Prescott, the loving wife. Not Sidney Prescott, the author. Not Sidney Prescott, the devoted mother. They don't look up to that. What they idolize is the woman in distress, the woman in turmoil, the woman on the verge of a mental breakdown. If you saw my tweet yesterday, you already like the idea if you're listening to this again. What they idolize is the Sidney Prescott who is fighting for her life. And you do not have that without Ghostface. That is why a new spree would be crucial to these individuals. It is a way to acknowledge that they value her emotional hardship over the peace that she has earned as a character. And in a way, you would be directly pointing a finger at us, the audience, because we will not let this character go. And again, it can tackle the parasocial relationship thing. And I just think this is a brilliant motive to have for a character like Sidney Prescott, who many would agree is the ultimate final girl, and it acknowledges her legacy in a very profound way. They want the OG final girl back. That is what these killers' motive can be. I see nothing wrong with that. And if it is Anna Camp, maybe they go down the Angelina route. Angelina, I think, was supposed to be an old high school friend of Sidney's or an old classmate. Let that be her relationship to Sidney. She doesn't have to be Leslie Mocker. She could be someone who's idolized Sidney for so long. But the version of Sidney that she's idolized is not a very healthy version, and she's determined to have that version come to life through executing a new Ghostface spree. Sidney's husband, her children, Gale, all of these people are expendable so that she can witness the version of Sidney that she idolizes so much, which is Sidney the victim, Sidney the fighter, Sidney the survivor. She doesn't want to kill Sidney, just wants to kill everyone around her, just wants to cause turmoil in her life so she can see her idol come to the surface, and that is the final girl, Sidney Prescott. That is the motive I can see transpiring. This is also where the AI angle can come from in bringing back these dead killers, because to these people or individual, that is when Sidney was at her best, when Billy was pushing her to her brink, when Stu was pushing her to her brink, when Roman was pushing her to her brink. This is what made the Sidney they idolized. That is why they would be crucial components to our new killers. Now, the other thing I wanted to touch on with Scream 8 and how I see this going down is this. What if you get a bombshell announcement in the coming weeks that Scream 7 will be releasing this October? And you get another bombshell announcement that they are in fact shooting the Scream 8 this summer. And then Scream 8 will take the February or March spot of Scream 7, while Scream 7 comes out in October. That is how I can see this going down. That is the only way I can see this going down if there is any legitimacy to what is on production weekly. Definitely don't want to let this video end without addressing the news that just came out from Daniel RPK, who again has been very credible in the past with several things. No matter how much you want to focus on the things he's got wrong, he's gotten things right. And especially as of late when it comes to Scream, he is now piggybacking off of something I recall bringing up earlier last year, which is the fact that, I'll just say rumored, allegedly, Scream 8 is going to just be another film carried by Neve Campbell as Sidney Prescott once again. Now, obviously people already have their pitchforks. They're expressing how exhausted they are of Sidney. It's tired. Scream is running out of fresh ideas. Now, that sentiment I can't disagree with. When you're going back to the well this many times with a character who you present to us as someone who doesn't want anything to do with Ghostface. Not that that's not the case for all of these final girls, but it just becomes a bit tiresome when you have a character surpassing the final girl that it's centered on, and we're not doing anything else with the character. But in defense of this, the way this can work is what I've been talking about in other videos. You have a Halloween Kills type approach. You have a narrative that takes place very closely together in Scream 7 and Scream 8. And if that is how you do it, then that will be fine. That'll be more digestible than giving us another trilogy of films years apart with a bunch of deranged people taking issue with Sidney Prescott. Because what's starting to happen with some viewers who are engaging with what's unfolding on their screens and how this franchise is set up, they're starting to not be able to believe that so many people have this issue with Sidney Prescott. Every so often, every so many years, somebody has a problem with her and they put on this costume and they come after this woman alone who does nothing but mind her business and live her best life. It starts to become unbelievable to people. It does. It starts to become unbelievable because we're not talking about a 1v1. We're talking about one woman versus 20, a 20v1. It's starting to chip away at the appeal to a lot of people. And this argument that, oh, well, if you don't like it, don't watch it. I will say this. You guys have to be very careful about how you push that. Because if that don't like it, don't watch crowd of people become the majority and they don't watch it, then guess what? You're not going to get any more Sidney Prescott. Because it seems to be that there's an unwillingness for a lot of us to acknowledge the fact that we're not engaging with this character in the same capacity. Some of us engage with Sidney in a quantity way. Others of us, like myself, engage with her in a quality way. Meaning, let's say you go to the bookstore and get a book. I start reading, or you start reading this book, and yet there is no end in sight, because as you're reading, someone keeps adding pages. You know what you're going to do eventually? You're going to put the book down. You're going to put the book down. You're not going to bother trying to finish it because you don't see an end in sight anymore. That is what's starting to happen with Sidney Prescott if you're not careful. When does she get her happy ending? When do we move on? When? Why is she not deserving of this? I don't understand it. And it goes back to what I said earlier in the video about why this would be such a appropriate legacy sequel motive for a character like Sidney Prescott, to have a group of people who are obsessed or idolize Sidney the final girl, Sidney the character in turmoil, distress. They need that. They need to witness it. They don't like Sidney at peace. They don't like Sidney with a husband, a Sidney with children. I believe there is a handful of you out there who, just like me, are engaging with what the creatives are telling us. What they've been getting across for as long as this has been a franchise at this point, ever since Scream 3, I would say. Kevin Williamson himself, who wasn't even a part of Scream 3, has made this clear of what he wants for Sidney. It's been made abundantly clear. Sidney is supposed to have a happy ending. That is how her story is supposed to end, right? Where is it? When do we get it? That is how some of us feel. We're trying to get there, and it's not coming to us, and it's becoming frustrating. It's becoming frustrating because you can do a plethora of different stories with this franchise, and you keep going back to the same well. And again, the notion that if you don't like it, don't watch it, you're playing with fire there. That's what a lot of these franchises did. People didn't like it, they didn't watch it, things got canceled, course corrections. So you got to be careful with that. You don't want that to become the majority. If the majority of people are tired of it, which I don't think that'll get to that point because they do make these movies for rather cheap. But let's say it got to that. People are just tired of Scream because it's not doing anything new. It's just Sidney. The franchise is going to end. And then if you're someone who just wanted to see Sidney endlessly like that, you're probably going to end on a bad note. But it just also leaves the door open for Sidney to be killed off, Sidney to be butchered in other ways creatively. We just don't need it. We don't need it. Let her go. And with all of that out of the way, I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. Happy Mother's Day to all of your mothers out there. Do something nice for them over the weekend. But what do you guys think about all of this down in the comment section below? Do you want a Scream 8? Let me know why or why not down in the comment sections. If you haven't already, of course, make sure you subscribe, turn on post notifications so you never miss a video. In the description, I'll have links to all of my social media accounts. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can message me there, of course, to let me know if there are any movies, news, or reviews you'd like me to cover in the future. And with all that in mind, guys, I will see you in the next video.